audience in the audience, your job security for me, so please. Oh, they can't hear. Okay, this audience seems suitably enervated. We're going to hope to teach you something about SETI. I work for the SETI Institute, by the way. That's almost my name. My name is Seth. Sugar Echo Tango Hawaii. SETI, Sugar Echo Tango India. Anybody know what the acronym stands for, by the way? Is anybody in here conscious? If we switch languages to Bosnia-Herzegovinian dialect, would that help? Is there anything that would help? Nothing would help.
Oh, we're not talking Canadian, that's why.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, they said sorry, that's so cute.
All right, anyhow, I'll tell you what it is because it's relevant. I don't think you're going to get any of these questions either, by the way. All right, it's search.
I have faith.
Yeah, I'm glad you have faith. It's, you know, America is the most religiously inclined country in the first world. The SETI stands for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Okay, anybody see the movie Contact? Anybody old enough to have seen the movie Contact?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 people. Okay.
So Jodie Foster played you in that movie, right?
Well, sort of. I was her dad. Okay. All right, enough of all that. I guess we ought to get to the questions. Here it is. Which moon in the solar system is dotted with chilly lakes of liquid natural gas and possibly even life?
We gotta.
Do you guys know
There's
what,
some guy in the back?
All right, let's go.
Back
do
there.
we know what moons are? Should we
All
start
right.
off with?
Do you want to take some comedian answers first?
No.
We'll just go.
Go.
Nothing
All
funny
right.
about it.
Let's go.
I think it's Titan.
Eureka.
Let
The answer was Titan. All right. So we have a fun theme-related prize for you.
How about very fun space socks, huh? You just
It's cold in space, you're gonna need those.
Don't dip into those chilly gaseous lakes without your socks on.
Yeah, liquid natural gas. Well, you know, Titan is one of the moons of Saturn, right? You can see that from this slide. And I don't remember how many moons Saturn has, but it's like 60. Some of them are no bigger than this building, but you know, Titan is. In fact, it used to be thought to be the biggest moon in the solar system, which is how it got its name. But unfortunately, it's just covered in smog. It's like
Surpassed by Ganymede.
yeah, that's right. One of the moons.
So it's like Los Angeles.
Yeah,
Covered in smog.
It is, but it's totally opaque.
Cool.
Unlike Los Angeles, which occasionally you can see something. Yeah, yeah, but it turns out that it rains liquid natural gas. This is not a moon on which you might want to smoke, but you can anyhow because there's no oxygen, it would burn. Anyway.
So we have a water cycle on Earth, and they have a methane cycle there.
That's right.
So they have lakes, oceans, methane. So
And methane is what?
CH4,
Oh, right, of course.
which is
I just heard that in Mexico they produced a cloud that rains tequila,
Oh, nice.
which seems like a great way to bring tourists, the wrong type of tourists, I think. I heard that and I was like, hey Mexico, how about you produce clouds that rain water that we can drink? You know what I mean? Like without shitting ourselves. But the tequila works too. No, the tequila works too. I guess that one works too.
I don't know if everyone's gonna hold up or drink tequila, but maybe another like 10 years.
Oh right, they're interns. Right.
so Seth, is it possible that we can find some sort of life in these lakes and oceans that live in methane?
Well, of course it's possible. Almost anything's possible. But it has been suggested by a guy, actually it's a guy up in Pullman, Washington, at the school there. And he says, look, NASA is somewhat about exploration. And if you've ever read anything about explorers, you know that they mostly did it with ships. Because when ships were finally good enough to sail across an ocean, you know, the whole world was there to be mapped out. So a lot of exploration done. But he says we ought to go back to ships for exploration and send a ship on a rocket to Titan, have it land in one of these lakes, launch the boat, and then, you know, have a fishing line with some bait and a, you know, flashlight and maybe a video camera and see if there's anything down in those lakes. It would be rather dramatic. If there's anything there, it's probably microbial. Don't get too excited. It's not something that you could take home to mom.
In a methane lake?
Yeah, methane is carbon chemistry.
Okay. Isn't that farts? Isn't that the elephant in the room?
Well, they're various, I mean, you want a complete chemical analysis. I don't-
Well, no, I mean, I thought that was where like maybe there was a joke, but I guess.
There is.
I guess
You can
I was
have
fishing
people
for
with
the
their
wrong
badges
joke.
walking up behind you.
Yeah, your ship has sailed, that
Yeah.
joke ship has sailed.
Yeah.
Blowing up cows from the behind.
Can you light liquid methane on fire?
Well, if you have a yeah, sure, if you have an oxygen atmosphere, I'm sure you could.
But it's a nitrogen atmosphere, so you can't.
Yeah. I mean, there's very little oxygen there. Sorry, but there just isn't. And the fact that there's oxygen here, there was a lot more before you guys got in here, but before you got in here, it was 21% oxygen. Right now, it's less.
Are you saying we're sucking the air out of the room?
Yes.
Not that you do, well, at least the oxygen part of it.
Okay, so in comparison, in terms of moon size, so you have Ganymede and Jupiter, you have Titan, Saturn, and then that's about 50% larger than Earth's moon.
Something like that. Yeah,
So that's about size-wise how big we're talking. Cool.
Yeah, and the lakes, by the way, which you can sort of see in this fourth-rate slide, but this slide costs the Europeans a lot of money to make. You see some of these lakes, and they're about the size of the Great Lakes. So if you know the size, Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, something like that. These lakes are
Canada.
big.
There we go again.
They border Canada.
Yeah, are you all from Bathurst and Bloor? Where are you from? I mean, the galvanizing these people is tougher than galvanizing 10,000, steel cans or something.
So you think that the most likely place for life on this planet would be deep inside these lakes?
Well, not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
Look, if you think of what you need for life, what do you need for life? I know what you think you need for life, but
Let's hear something.
yeah.
Let's hear something.
iPhone, my boyfriend, my puppy, just like a good life, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I need for
Chipotle.
life. Nah, fuck Chipotle, we live in California.
What do we need for life? Water. Water? Money.
Yeah.
What are the chances of actually getting this funded? You say, hey, President Trump, we'd love a couple $1 billion in fish in a methane land.
He said, go fuck yourself.
Okay, that's a yes then,
Go
right?
fuck yourself, we're gonna find life in our ocean.
Our ocean.
Like, there's life in our ocean, you piece of shit. Come on.
No, we tell them that there's refugees up there, and that, we need to get those refugees
We're
out
gonna
from
build a
China.
wall, we're gonna build legs, the pipe,
Yeah.
big wall.
Giant wall outside. Good use of those.
All right. All that makes a lot of sense, but actually, NASA is going to send a mission to the outer solar system, but it probably won't go to Titan. Some people think that's the best place to find ET, but it's probably not. The best place is one of the moons of Jupiter, and they're only half as far away. Anybody have any comments about Titan that they want to bring to the fore at this point? I mean, you're really...
Share your true feelings about
Very
that.
Yeah.
Don't hold it in, we know how you feel.
Overrated.
There we go.
All right, where do you prefer to go in the solar system? Jupiter. Why?
There you go. Stars on Yelp would you give Titan? One?
That's right.
I don't know about this guy.
Well, I'll tell you, it's better than Jupiter. If you're planning a trip to Jupiter, Jupiter's on your bucket list, because it will have to be a bucket list if you go to Jupiter. The first thing you'll find is that its atmosphere is about 10,000 miles thick, so you just start falling through it. But after you've gone down a couple of hundred miles, the pressure and the temperature will simultaneously cook and crush you. And you might not ever hit land. There may not be any land in all of that. So, it's okay except for that.
Quick follow-up.
5
So,
stars.
do you guys know what Enceladus is? Yes? Okay, what's Enceladus?
Moon of Saturn with the highest reflectivity ratio in the solar system.
Is that true?
With
Reflectivity?
the highest albedo of the solar system? What do you think?
Well, if he's the only one who knows.
Okay, so it is. So it's a moon of Saturn. Does it have the highest reflectivity?
I don't know, I would have thought something like Europa might be, but you might be right, you could be right.
And so the idea about Enceladus, I just want to mention, is that there's plumes of water being shot out of Enceladus, and we think we can fly a spacecraft through those plumes, capture some biomarkers, and come back to Earth and be like, hey, there is life. But maybe that versus Titan, where do you sit there?
Well, I think Enceladus has the advantage you don't have to land, right? Just like Alan said, if you want to find life in space and you think there's some life deep underneath the icy surface of Enceladus, all you have to do is send a spacecraft with a baseball mitt, essentially, you fly it around Enceladus and you grab some of that ice being shot out like a geyser from the cracks there. You bring that back to Earth and you look at it under a microscope, maybe you see something wiggling. Cheaper.
Plume with a view.
Yes, plume with a view. Is that
Yeah. Who was the repeated
Our next
appearance?
question.
And then we can say, Eureka, we found life in our solar system.
all right, they're bored with Saturn.
Fuck Saturn.
Well, if they liked it, they would have put a.
Question number 2.
All right, that's my bad. Well, you can see this. Who was the Boston Brahmin? If you know what that means, a Boston Brahmin, member of the 1%, if you like, who promoted the idea of the canals on Mars. And he was also said to be the best student that Harvard ever had, although, mind you, it's only Harvard.
Obama as an answer. All right, hold on, we have an answer back here. Go ahead and say it. Ramanujan? No?
And I didn't even hear the name, but
Ramanujan. Did I get that? I appreciate the spelling too. I was slightly off in my head. That's good to know. Transposed a couple letters there.
it's too bad. That was the all-expense paid vacation to Sarnia.
Yes. One car, my friend.
Other thoughts, answers?
Einstein.
Einstein.
Don't think he went to
He didn't go to Harvard, no.
Is that JFK? That seems like a JFK.
Yeah, JFK? JFK?
Yeah.
All right, no.
He did go to
I could
Harvard.
just picture him saying canals on Mars.
Mars Canal.
Canal.
What?
He didn't go to Harvard.
He did go to Harvard,
Oh, it's a Bill Gates.
but he dropped out. Yeah,
Oh, Mark
okay.
Zuckerberg.
Canal on Mars. So what time period was that, you think?
Well, I can tell you what time period it was.
All right, give him the time period.
About 1900.
All right.
Oh.
So think back when you were young.
Wasn't a U.S. president? I feel like I'm on the right track.
He died in 1916, if that helps you. Hey, nobody knows.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Nobody here from Massachusetts, right? You would know if you were from Massachusetts. There's a city named after this guy's family. Is it
John Boston.
good?
You got it again, man.
Thank you.
Worcester.
Worcester.
I was gonna say, is it Mr. Worcester?
Mr. Worcester? Willie Worcester.
They're killing ourselves over here.
Amherst.
Should we give him a hint?
Hey, it's not
Does
gonna
anybody
help.
have any idea?
Canton.
Something Williams.
Something Williams, okay.
Billy D. Williams.
I don't know his first name.
Something really-
Other than some dude.
No, I'll tell you,
Okay.
his first name was Percival.
Oh.
All right. Check your Facebook friend list.
Does anyone here know anyone in person?
Does anyone know what Massachusetts is?
Do you know where you are right now?
Okay.
I think that
Over
would be
here,
it.
another guy back there. Ruthie or Percy?
Yes.
Yeah!
Oh, give him the drink
All right.
card!
You get a free
I
trip
assume he
to
doesn't have a
Lowell.
phone with him.
All right.
Oh, that's actually a gift of Percival Lowell.
All right, we'll hand you, my friend.
Shorty got low,
Shorty got low.
Kaleidoscopes, rocket kaleidoscopes. So you two can stare off into space.
That's a good gift. Good prize.
By the way, that photo in the lower left of Percival Lowell, there he is looking at Mars. He tells us, he had so much money he didn't have to try and get tenure at some fourth-rate university. He just built his own observatory, and that's the Lowell Observatory.
Check out working
Yeah, that photo was made, I don't know, about 1910 or something. But back then, of course, you would put on a suit to sit alone all night in a dark dome to look at Mars.
Pervert.
Perversible.
Perversible.
Perversible. Lol.
Percival lol.
That's a low.
I can see astronomy being easier. Well, about 50 years ago, there was just no email, no distractions at least. There was no internet, no social media. You could more easily stare up at the stars with telescopes.
Right now, you'd probably just use Google Street View on Mars.
Yeah, but, there's Adderall now. You can focus in deep. You know what I mean? You can really focus in deep these days.
Are you
I think the big
self-thinking?
advantage 50 years ago was there wasn't so much street lighting. That's the real problem.
That's a big one, yeah. Can't see anything from downtown San Francisco.
No.
You have to go really far.
I'm always like, these damn kids and their street lights. Boy.
Has anyone used like an 8-inch mirror telescope before?
Mirror, yes.
I've used these.
I like him to be at least 8
Like
inches.
a 80-inch mirror.
You're talking fitness or?
Has anyone used a telescope? Is anyone? One person was thumbs
Raise your
up,
hand if
two.
you use a telescope. Okay.
Was it pointed at the sky? I won't judge you if it was pointed elsewhere.
Did anyone see Mars or Saturn's rings or anything like that with their telescope? Venus, okay, all right. Did it influence you to care more about the cosmos?
Just no.
So Seth, what are the canals on Mars? You wanna?
Oh, yeah, what are the canals on Mars? Well, they're defects in the vision of Percival Lowell. Yeah, that's, well, they ran an experiment, it was kind of interesting, because this was suggested. I have to say, in 1900, photography wasn't at a stage where you could make a better picture of Mars than what you could see with your eye. Okay, so, the photographers tried to make a picture of the canals on Mars without success. And Lowell said, the problem is that photography, you have to expose for, a quarter of a second or something like that. And it just blurs out, because of the motions of our own atmosphere, blurs out all the detail. Those canals are there. He gave lectures about it. He was a good speaker. He wrote 3 books about it. He was a good writer. The public believed there were canals on Mars. He gave them all Latin names and stuff like that. Okay, but other astronomers couldn't see him. So finally, some guy, his name was Maunder, by the way. That's of interest if you're into things like ice ages and so forth. But this guy Maunder in the UK went to a school for boys, and he had boys line up sort of like this. They were sitting in a classroom, and he made a map of sort of a pseudo-Mars. It was just up here on the blackboard, a circle, and he had some dots and maybe a few craters and so forth. He just made up a map, and he had the boys draw what they could see, right? So the ones up front were pretty accurate in getting the details right. The ones in the back could barely see anything, and they, it was kind of fuzzy. They could see there was a circle there. But the ones in the middle, somewhere in the middle, they would see some of the details and they would connect them with lines. So that says something about your brain, right? When you see dots, you tend to connect them. Not if you work for the government, but if you see dots, you try to
Take that one home.
try to connect them. Now, Lowell's, so that's probably what it was, but Lowell's thought, and all his books were about this, was that Mars was a dying, drying planet, which, by the way, turns out to be right, but he didn't know that. Right? And so the Martians, which he presumed were there, were busy trenching up their planet, digging all these canals to bring water from these polar regions down to the equatorial regions where they had their agriculture.
Which is what we're going to do when we get to Mars.
Maybe. I think we'll grow potatoes.
Grow potatoes.
Yeah.
Okay, and so
Nobody saw that movie either?
of course we saw the Martian, right? Yeah, exactly. It's exciting. Okay, so then NASA sends the Mariner
Potatoes
missions
on
up,
Mars.
and they start mapping, and they're like, no, those are crater impacts. Those are not canals. And then the whole theory is disproven that there was intelligence there. Right?
Yeah, but it wasn't the craters that he was seeing, actually. You can take his maps of all the canals and lay it on a modern photograph of Mars, made with the evidence there, and see if there's any sort of correlation. Oh, yeah, this canal here was just all these craters kind of lined up. That's not true. It was just completely random.
Couldn't he just backpedal and said, I meant ditches. Ditches on Mars.
Holes. And then holes.
Holes on Mars.
He should have looked at that picture and just said enhance at it a few times. That would have helped.
If we just did this, if we just like spread it out, then it would.
That's
be
true.
bigger, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Alright.
That looked very sexual.
Oh, that looks sexual? That's you, man. All I see are canals. Alright?
Well, it is true that when Lyndon Johnson was shown what you were talking about, the first photos in the Mariner 4 orbiter, right? And he looked at the photos, NASA showed them to him. And he said, so where are the canals? That's a tribute to American science education.
Yeah.
There it is.
Very good.
All right, and on we go. Question 3.
All right. What's the term used to describe the idea that microscopic life could travel in rocks from one planet to another?
Sounds
All right,
like
yes, Casey.
I think it's tourism.
That's pretty good.
Yeah?
There's rocks, like you travel
All right,
rocks from one planet to another.
We have an answer here. Let's hear it. Speak.
Say
Eureka!
it again.
Panspermia.
Oh, Eureka, everybody. Oh, lucky
That's a
you.
sperm!
Slot of sperm. For you, you get a nice set of space fax cards.
That's what Wendy
Where are
has.
you located? All
Wendy
right,
computer
here's the
can.
If you look
panspermia.
it up long enough, you get hypnotized and all you think is sperm.
It's the heart of the island.
That's just nailing right there.
Panspermia.
Yeah. Maybe some of you are aware of the fact that, and people have done experiments where they've taken some bacteria, they put them in a rock, and then they put the rock in a chamber which doesn't have any air in it, and they can hit it with a lot of ultraviolet light. They just kind of simulate what it would be like if that rock were in space. And they see how long they can keep that rock in there, take it out later, and see if the bacteria are still viable, which is to say, you can bring them back to life. And the answer is long enough, I mean tens of thousands, maybe millions of years, right, that it could be that life developed first on Mars about 4 billion years ago. Rocks are hitting Mars all the time, right? And when a rock slams into Mars, kicks off a lot of dirt.
Because it doesn't have much of an atmosphere.
It doesn't matter. Even if it did have much, but it had more of an atmosphere actually back then. But it still kicks off a lot. I mean, it happens to Earth too, right? So most of the dirt just falls right back down. But some of it gets kicked off so quickly that at such a high speed, it just leaves altogether and just sails around the solar system. And by chance, some of that stuff will slam into the Earth. And, you know, so it did that 4 billion years ago, hit the Earth, infected our planet, and you were all Martians. You're descended from Martian microbes. Now, I'm not saying that's true, but it could be true. It's called panspermia. I noticed that the
Panspermia.
scientists never talk about.
It could be true that that could have come from another solar system.
Well, that's harder. That's harder. To go from here to Mars doesn't take very long, right?
So if I were to get a girl pregnant, can I just say it's actually panspermia? I'm
It's a
sorry.
Martian.
You know, so it's no pan
It
egg.
was just, it came from space.
Wasn't me, baby.
I originally thought you said panspermia, and I thought, okay, that sounds like an awkward first date I've had.
So,
Panspermia.
Did you ever, you went on a date and you came in your pants?
Yes, I have prayed in my pants.
Cool, all right.
Yeah.
Just,
I have,
just checking.
And it doesn't spread
Raise
like
your
the
hand
same
if you're
way
out.
that panspermia does.
liars.
Put your hand if you come in your pants.
No, I'm the only one. Liars, liars, liars. You haven't lived until you're like, let me just use the bathroom quickly. I just gotta do something.
Too soon.
This is
Too soon.
All right, moving on, sorry.
You came too soon.
Yeah,
So Seth,
That was good. People are leaving now.
so asteroids.
okay. They have to wash their pants.
in his mind.
So asteroids can be up to, a kilometer in diameter. It can be huge. And they could house microbes, and then that could hit a place like Earth and produce life. And so that's potentially a way that life can arose in our solar system.
Well, it's not, nobody knows whether asteroids have any life in them. It's a little unlikely, actually. But, rocks that are kicked off from a planet that does have life, right? Anybody see there's a big crater down in Arizona, Winslow, Arizona, called Meteor Crater. An ingenious name. And it's about a mile across, privately owned, you can go look at it. But there's an even bigger crater northeast of Toronto. And you can see it on Google Earth. You can see it. It's like 100 miles across. It's huge. And that hit, millions of years ago. I don't remember exactly. But,
Yeah, probably.
something like that may have kicked up some of the flora or fauna of Canada and taken it somewhere else.
So is
Maybe
it
they're Canadians
possible-
elsewhere.
Is it possible that the asteroid that hit the Earth 65 million years ago and killed dinosaurs could have started life on the moon or on another?
Well, the moon's kind of a tough environment for life. I mean, there's no air, there's no water, there's no culture. I would say
Just
the moon is
empty
unlikely.
street.
But if it had landed,
Yeah.
some of these moons in the
No,
outer
like
solar
Wyoming.
system, maybe.
Quick question.
Yes.
How much is a 1 kilometer in American?
0.61 miles.
There we go. Got it.
Yeah.
Just, I didn't
.62.
know.
Well, no, basically,
That's the imperial.
It's that Ivy League education.
Yeah, but like we used non-metric system down here.
with diabetes.
Well, we have a different meteor down here than you guys in Canada, I'm sorry, so we're kind of a little different than you.
Yeah. I can't believe that fucking meteor kill all those dinosaurs though?
Yeah,
That's
kind of a bummer, yeah.
Jesus, what a
Can't believe the US still
anti-dino.
uses the English system for measurements. Isn't that dumb? Alright.
Alright, moving on.
So anyways, so there was life on Mars, you think it might have kicked rocks?
Yeah,
Who knows if there was life on Mars? There may still be life.
we're still waiting to see.
Alright.
3 cheers to the metric system.
Yeah.
Hooray! Yeah!
Alright, next question.
Wait, they don't have a more fun auto industry, that's why we have the.
Daddy!
Daddy! Panspermia.
Okay. What is the name of the, is anybody gonna get any of these? What is the name of the wooded area in southeast England where some US military people said that they saw a landed alien craft?
Stonehenge.
Is it called Alien Forest? Just a random guess. No?
No UFO fans? How many of you think the aliens are buzzing the skies?
Raise your hand
At
if
least
you think
there's
they're
one brave
aliens.
guy in the back.
Raise your hand if they're aliens buzzing the skies.
Or crash landed in Roswell or something like that.
That's 3.
Alright,
Only 4 of you have an imagination. Good.
1/3 of the American public believes this is true.
Was that the 100-acre wood?
Yeah.
100-acre wood?
Is that a Pooh Bear?
Winnie the Pooh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone knows this answer.
No, nobody knows this. All right. Anybody here from the UK? Anybody heard of the UK?
Was it Canada?
Well, yeah, the UK,
Did they just leave
the
somewhere?
greater Commonwealth, I think.
They were just born 5 minutes ago. We can't.
Okay.
I'm
You
kidding.
don't have to take that sitting down, buddy.
Has anyone heard of Roswell? Okay, so we've heard of Roswell. Do you guys know of an equivalent in the United Kingdom?
Oh, it's Will Ross.
Ye old Roswell, right?
Rose.
Roseville.
Roseway. Jeez. Just Rose.
Any hints?
It's nothing I can say except the answer because
All right.
no hint will help.
Let's
right?
find out
This
then.
is not a place you would have heard of unless you felt.
Oh, is it Lowell?
Aliens were here.
Lowell, Percival?
Yeah.
All right, the answer is
Abduct the British.
What's it called? Oh, Rendlesham. I was way close.
Yeah.
So this happened in the 1980s.
I go rock climbing there.
That's pretty good, given how flat it is.
This is what Canadians look like when you cross the border.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. Big thanks, man. Yeah.
All right. Somebody,
That was really interesting.
all right.
There is a big deal.
So what happened then?
Whoa, Black Betty.
Well, asking what happened there is like asking what happened at Roswell. How many people think that, aliens really did come hundreds of light years to enjoy some Tex-Mex cuisine in New Mexico and then made a navigation error in the last 50 feet and crashed into the desert?
Roswell's near a hot desert, right?
Anybody think,
Yeah.
yeah, Roswell's a pretty dull town. This was the best thing to ever happen to Roswell. Okay, nobody believes that. Well, I don't believe that anything happened in Rendlesham Forest either, but there was a U.S. military detachment. There's an Air Force base right near there that was used during the war by the U.S. military, and still, that isn't being used anymore, but the British were also there. Anyhow, so there were some Americans there. And they were walking through the forest for some reason that escapes me at the moment, but they saw lights and they thought, my God, this is it. And later, some of the guys on that walk through the forest testified that they had seen what looked like an alien craft. Now, there are all sorts of better explanations for this that include things like tractors, lighthouses, stuff like that.
Raccoon maybe, or something that's, eerie looking in the dark, the eyes? No? All right.
Could be.
Could be, okay.
All right, so next time you go to a pub in downtown London, make sure you know this because somebody may talk to you about it.
All right.
So what's the importance of knowing about because, Neil, we've talked about this, and you've talked about this with Neil deGrasse Tyson, that a lot of people believe that they are amateur astronomers when it comes to looking up at the stars, that they believe that they can see a little bit of light moving and call that a UFO, but there are people that literally look up at the stars all day, every day, and haven't seen any signs of alien life. So it's almost it's hubristic in a sense, self-confident, overly self-confident, to think that I saw an alien, but really you didn't.
Well, you can believe this, and as I say, 1/3 of the public believes it. And that's true in Canada too, by the way.
Can I ask a quick question? Do you believe it?
No.
No, you don't believe it. But how about this? Do you believe in, I mean, you believe in the microbial life on a Titan perhaps?
Yeah, that could be.
That could be. Do you believe beyond that, that there is the possibility of, I mean, is it okay if I'm asking this question?
Absolutely.
No, please, go ahead, she's taking notes actually.
Like, do you believe that there is life like us or something like it beyond our systems or various, I mean, the universe is giant. I'm not smart, but you know what I mean, like, is it out there? Could it be out there? Do you believe it could be out there?
Yeah, of course, and that's my day job to look for it.
Right, that's what I'm asking. Well,
I just don't think it's here,
right.
invading Kingston. I don't think so.
And, okay, I get that. Is that where, Kingdom is where
It's
Randall's
actually
Shire is?
Scarborough, yeah.
Got it.
All right, Seth, let's go
All
on.
right, next one.
Yeah. Okay, it's multiple choice, so you have, it's the opportunity for 1/3 of the audience to actually get something right. If you
You
were
got a couple right?
Yeah,
How did you guys got a couple
All except
right?
that random
We
forest
gave
in
out
England.
socks. Yeah.
I mean, there are answers on the bottom of your chairs, but if you boarded NASA's fastest rocket and headed to Proxima B, which, by the way, is the closest other star system, how long would it take you to get there? 1,000 years, 75,000 years, 120,000 years?
All right.
NASA's fastest
All right.
rocket.
Wait, let's start with this. How far away is Proxima B?
That's correct.
That's pretty
Far,
quantitative.
that's a pretty good answer. No, okay, how about in light years? How far away is it?
Approximately.
Wait, what's that? Say it out loud. 4.3, good job. That's a mini Eureka moment, okay. All right, so he knows how close to your star system
I think
is.
he-
One sock.
One sock.
One sock.
Now, how long is the show?
Okay.
All right, so what about the answer to the question now? If you boarded NASA's fast rocket, how fast do you think NASA's fastest rocket is? Fast, okay. Great answer.
Oh, we got far and fast. I think we got it covered.
That's the guy back there.
Wait, is
We
that,
got an answer?
is that one?
All right, what? C?
C, is C correct?
C, yeah, well, it violates, relativity, but aside from that. C is the speed of light. It's not that fast.
Not that
Ooh,
fast.
C would be on.
So dumb.
Well, now we know how far away it is.
I just got the joke. C is the speed of light. Haha, because that's not. I just got the joke.
Oh,
C is used as a constant.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so smart.
Okay, now there, you
Give me
have two
the
other options, guys.
Wait, did anybody
Yeah.
guess how fast rockets built by NASA actually go?
Yeah, how fast do you guys think rockets built by NASA go? Give us a number. In miles per hour, how fast? Oh, sorry, kilometers per hour. Kilometers per hour. You're right. That
Kilometers
trick
per hour
system.
is A.
A, but yeah. Kilometers per hour, eh? All right. Hey.
All right. Any ideas? 25,000.
25,000 kilometers an hour. Is that just pretty close?
It's within a factor of 2. Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else?
The fastest rockets are about 12 to 15 kilometers per second. So you can multiply that by the number of seconds in an hour. So that's per second. That's great if you're going, to. Yeah, if you're going to Toronto, it's unclear why you want to do that. But if
720,000 kilometers.
The whole northern part of your country is uninhabited.
There's a lot more than that. There are of us. Just saying.
that's not quite right. There are people up there.
This is why people hate Americans. Jesus,
Yeah,
come
I
on,
know.
come on, come
Let's
on.
go.
Anybody been to Churchill? Population 800.
All right,
Okay.
so we have two other possible answers, A or B.
Yeah. How many people think A?
A.
All right. How many people think B?
All right.
Click on. How many people think C?
Good for you guys.
You guys
That
are
was
smarter,
excluded.
smarter than you may think you are because B is the correct answer.
Yeah, great job. That was a good amount of people.
You are dead. All right. But no one gets a prize because everyone got it right. And half you got it wrong. You are dead.
All right, so
That's how long it takes.
Seth, what about who's heard of the light sail before? Raise your hand. It's a good amount of people. So okay, so what if we Okay, we have a light sail, we powered by lasers, and we send a bunch of them off to Proxima. How long does that take? That's will only take 20 years, right?
Well, if you, if you can send them at about a quarter the speed of light, and maybe you can do that, but all you can send is something about the size of a matchbook,
Okay.
a silver dollar.
And then it can communicate the video stream back to us.
I don't know if you think you can get all that capability into something that's
Xbox.
that big.
Maybe they're looking
You
for
might be
a
able to
light.
get a camera, but what about the transmitter and everything else?
So at the current speed, this is at like the speed of the New Horizons spacecraft. So that took like 10 years to get to Pluto. Okay, so now so it takes 75,000 years, which would be a lot of pretzels, in order to.
If you have a middle seat, it's going to be uncomfortable.
Middle seats could be
Do you think the New Horizons spacecraft, when it got to Pluto, and they were like, oh, it's not a planet anymore, and it was like, fuck, I gotta go out here. You're not a planet? Why am I not looking at you? Okay.
It's on the way to it's on its way to someplace even less impressive. All right, well, is that it for that one?
Yeah, do you have anything more you want to say other than this dead figure in a seatbelt? All right, moving on.
I thought we had another little visual to talk about, but okay.
All right. For today's SETI experiments, now you know what those are. If you saw Contact, you really know what it is. But it's trying to find the aliens, not by going there, which obviously takes too long, or waiting for them to come here, which you guys don't seem to believe anyhow, right? It's using big antennas and trying to eavesdrop on signals. Okay, so we've been doing that for a while. And the question here is, could these experiments today detect alien TV signals from how far away? 440, 400 light years. How far away do you think that today's technology could detect, for example, the CBC, right? On the basis of its
Hey.
broadcast.
All right, so you have an answer right there?
Now the government is right.
Sweet.
Find out, express more doubt.
And for you, we got some wonderful space stickers.
Space
Hey, stickers.
Yeah.
Put them on your
I'm sure
scooter.
about the video.
So Seth, we didn't really get to touch on this too much at the beginning, but you just mentioned that you, at SETI, you listen for signals. Now, the other ways are searching for those signals through finding the life in our solar system or around, or...
Well, that's finding the aliens themselves. There they are,
Yeah.
in situ, in that methane.
Yep. See, we can send spacecraft to go and find them, or we can tune our ear out to listen.
Right.
But it gets a little complicated trying to listen because you have to basically have ears all over the planet facing every direction all the time.
Well, that depends. I mean, if the aliens were broadcasting relentlessly a signal to Earth, because if they have telescopes, they would know that there's life on Earth because they'd see the oxygen in the atmosphere. That they could see. So they know, all right, we don't know whether it's lettuce, grass, or humans, but they could tell that there's life here. And they might just send a signal all the time saying, hey, we're the Klingons, join our book club, or whatever they say. Okay, so then you wouldn't have to have antennas everywhere. But it's kind of a moot point because you can't afford to have antennas everywhere. It would be good.
And it requires a large amount of energy to send a ping in every direction every second.
Well, we don't broadcast deliberately. We leave that to the CBC. We don't broadcast.
So we're losing out on our possibility of aliens discovering us because we don't ping every.
No, they may have bigger antennas than we do, and maybe they have picked up stuff since the Second
Not
World
the
War.
size
Actually,
of the antenna that matters, it's how many pings you're getting.
That's true.
I think he's right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they could have picked that up. They could have picked it. If they had antennas that were 100 times bigger than ours, and you know, if they're 1,000 years more advanced, maybe they had that. They could have picked up the sort of things we've been sending into space since the Second World War. Okay. But there's a consequence of that might conceivably interest you, but I wouldn't bet it. And that is that, in fact, if you think you're being abducted by aliens, as 7% of the American populace seems to think, then it's kind of remarkable that they're already here to try and take you out of your bedroom for these unauthorized experiments, because they already probably don't know you're here. Right? Those signals have only gone out, what, how many years has it been since the Second World War? It's 70 light years thereabouts. Right? And if they're more than 35 light years away, there hasn't been enough time for the signals to get to them, decide they don't like the programming, get in their spacecrafts which can maybe go at sea, and come all the way here just to call you out of your house. right? So it's
So
just something to
well,
think about.
Do you guys feel you're abducted right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do they do those canal probes? It sounds like anal.
Anal probes.
Anal probes.
Say anal probes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Do you guys get how that would work as a joke? Alright.
If you take the C off of canal, it's anal.
Remember before we were talking about Mars and the canals? And then there's-
Yeah, I feel abducted myself right
They're
now.
already light years ahead of
Hey,
you.
can I ask you a question? Do those signals do they like degenerate? Do they like fade away? Or are they like strong as they leave the Earth? Do they?
Well, all the signals get weaker with distance, you know,
Right,
right?
yeah.
I mean, you put a light bulb over here and you walk far away from it and it gets,
Okay,
it
because
seems
they
to be
always say
dimmer.
like people, like things light years away are gonna get our signals, but it seems like wouldn't they degrade by them?
Well, if they have a big enough antenna, you can always find them.
Okay.
They can be on the other side of the universe and you can find them if you have a big enough antenna.
What size of antenna are we talking about?
Well,
Across?
to find something like, television broadcasting, you might need, and if you're, say, 10 or 20 light years away, you might need an antenna about the size of the province of Alberta or something.
Okay.
But,
Well, that's doable.
I mean, maybe it's not such a loss, right? You just cover Alberta with.
But how do you know it's gonna be a TV signal, radio signals and TV signals that they're communicating with? Why the assumption there?
Well, radio and TV are the same thing, it's just a content.
Just
It's
the
like,
content,
it's like
yeah.
saying rock and
Good
roll
line,
and
yeah.
classical music, they're book music. From the standpoint of the aliens, it's the same.
So in
Yeah.
order for us to succeed with the
Yeah.
method that SETI's using to discover life, we need to have the Earth covered in terms of trying to receive signal in as many directions as frequently as possible.
That would be good, that'll tick off farmers. But what you can do is, for example, cover the backside of the moon, or just build the whole thing in space.
Oh, the whole array in space.
You could do that.
Oh, that's a good idea.
You know,
I don't think we've talked about that before. That's a good idea. Yeah.
All right, well,
if somebody can find
find
out,
out
doesn't
Kickstarter.
What do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean by that? In space, where in space?
matter.
Doesn't matter.
Just put it in, there's something called the Lagrange points, I don't wanna get technical, but there are places that are between here and the moon where you can put something, just stay there. A stable position.
Why don't we just put it on the moon? I mean, like, what's the moon doing, you know?
Well, that's right. You
They're
know,
close enough to the moon, they can get to the moon, they'd be like, oh, there's that blue thing.
well, the moon is no closer to the aliens than we are.
I guess it's true. But we could use the whole moon.
Raise your hand if you know what a Lagrange point is.
Well,
There we go. That's pretty good.
I hope you're in a management
The broad
position.
point is where his receding hairline is, I believe, LeBron. LeBron.
Basketball?
Yeah, that's basketball.
There's a drag queen called Laganja Lestranja, that's as close as I can get.
That's the best you can get, yeah.
RuPaul's Drag Race, anyone? Yeah. Quick.
All right, let's go to
Cool, next question.
next question.
Question number 7.
That's number 7,
Do lights keep changing, or am I having a stroke?
What was the name of the character played by Jodie Foster in the movie Contact? This is relatively
All right, come
easy.
on.
All you have to do is occasionally go to the multiplex.
Carl
10 years
Sagan.
ago, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, yeah, 20 years ago. Were you going to the multiplex
on.
20 years ago?
20 years.
Think of something you saw with your parents when you were 5 or 3.
Well, there's like 6 lady
Movie is as
scientists.
old as they are.
It's on Netflix.
So you saw it?
But they're better.
No, you didn't see it.
Too busy chilling.
Too busy. He was
Nobody
in
know? Anybody
LeBron
know?
zone. Anybody?
I don't know.
Jodie Foster's character.
Wait, who here knows who Jodie Foster is? Okay.
Freaky Friday?
Okay.
Alright. Nothing. I don't think we're gonna get this answer.
No, probably not.
Okay,
Okay.
let's give a hint.
Who did she play in Freaky Friday? My mom? Oh, you said the mom. No, she was the kid. The remake.
Yeah, she was
There
a
was
foster child.
Oh, boy, yeah, she was. Yeah. No, that was the second. That was a remake, you kids. Get out of here. Get out of here. Yeah, Lindsay Lohan also played the remake in Parent Trap. Come on. These are both, there were originals. There were original. All right, there were originals. Have you ever heard of Haley Mills? Do you know who Haley Mills is? God,
They're mad at it,
what a
too.
world. What a world. Let's get
Maybe they have other
together.
talents.
Yeah. We could have a real good
They're the
time.
scientists.
I know, but, oh, all right.
Alright.
What, should we, any
Seth?
guesses?
Good in Pete's
Sarah.
match between the.
Sarah?
Sarah?
Okay.
Eh.
No?
Alright.
Sarah. Common name.
Is that the answer? Rebecca?
Give the answer.
Jane?
Ellie.
Ellie.
Oh, God.
Actually, after this movie, this is the only way that Jody can orgasm now.
Looks like she's getting into the foster trees.
Seth, what's the importance of this? What's the importance of this question?
It really doesn't have much importance.
You just wanted to pop culture.
Yeah,
Divide the
yeah,
audience
pop
up.
I was consultant for the, on the film. I mean,
Yeah.
But that's not important either. And it didn't help much.
What exactly did you consult in terms of the film? What
Well,
did they ask you?
it was mostly the art department at Warner Brothers who called me up every day and said, all right, Seth, what does it look like when you fly through a wormhole? I said, well, 2 weeks ago when I last did that, I can tell you what it looked like. And I thought, look, 9 out of 10 movies, all they do is they get some computer animation of what looks like flying through a pig's intestine. But if you actually were going close to the speed of light, what do you see? Well, the whole universe collapses into a bright spot in front of you and a bright spot behind you. But of course, that's not very interesting visually. They said, okay, thank you, click.
Right, they're like, back to the pig intestine.
And then they did the pig intestine.
And when was the last time you did that? When was the last time you did that? Fly through a pig intestine?
Yeah, I don't have the stomach for it. There's Jody in front of the very large array in New Mexico. If you ever go there, check it out.
So that was it? They didn't say, hey, so what do you think these lines that Jodie Foster's saying? Do you think these are, they make sense? They didn't ask you of anything else in terms of
Well, no, I have done some scripts where it was a film being shot in Vancouver, actually. The remake of Day the Earth Stood Still in Vancouver. I know where Vancouver is. It's near Whistler. Okay. Yeah, there was a remake with Keanu Reeves and John Cleese and Jennifer Connelly, and they had me correct some of the dialogue. But I got to tell you, in the movies they don't want accurate dialogue. They want dialogue that tells the story best, and that usually makes reference to kind of iconic speak for scientists. For example, there was a line in the script that said, Professor Proctor, or whatever his name was, there's a bolide on a hyperbolic trajectory entering the inner solar system at 3 × 10⁷ meters per second. That's what it said in the script. So I crossed that out, and I wrote, Bob, there's a goddamn rock headed our way. Because that's what you would really say. Nobody would call one another, Professor Fudnick or anything like that.
Hey, that's my name.
They would never do it. So, but if you go to see the movie, what it says is, Professor Fudnick, there's a bolide on a hyperbolic trajectory. But that sounds like scientists from Hollywood's point of view.
I can't believe Keanu Reeves could string those words together.
Yeah, that's right.
He's Canadian.
Is he?
Yeah.
Really?
He's what?
You learn something every day. I thought he was just like a California surfer guy. Keanu Reeves is Canadian.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah,
No, he learns something every day.
yeah.
When I went up there, my colleague said, we want you to find out if Keanu is really as stupid as we think he is. And I went up there, he's not so stupid.
No, he's fucking, he's Keanu Reeves. He's as smart as Justin Trudeau, for sure. Like, he's like, pretty smart,
Come on.
pretty smart, but like,
It's the good looking but not too smart. That's kind of like how.
Did Keanu Reeves have a famous dad? No? I was just wondering. I was wondering how he got his job. Come on! Jokes. Come on. I like Justin Trudeau. Well, that tattoo and dad ass.
Let's go to the next one, shall we? We've delved into Canadian pop
And
culture.
that's a Millennium Falcon back there, right?
Seth, this is a telescope in New Mexico,
Right.
so how big is this, what does it look for?
Well, it's called the VLA, Very Large Array, and this is a clear endorsement of the imagination of scientists. And each of those antennas there, that's the real thing there, by the way, is about 80 feet in diameter, know what a foot is, so if you don't, it's like 25 meters. All right, 25 meters in diameter, and there are 27 of them,
Like,
on a big kind of triangle kind of thing, like this, and peace symbol, really. And they move them around, they're on tracks, and they move them around occasionally. And it's used for radio astronomy. So it's never been used for trying to eavesdrop on the aliens, for SETI. It's never been used for that. But it has been used as a backdrop for movies that you talk about SETI. It's about an hour's drive from Socorro, New Mexico, if you spend a lot of time there.
Have you been there?
Second.
Those are huge. There's 27 of them?
There are 27.
Wow, those are big.
Well, they're not, yeah, they're not, I mean, it's
Showing
impressive.
Spotify.
The trouble is, when you're there, you see one, and then you drive for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
She's actually listening to Skrillex and now is
Skrillex? You said Skrillex? Yeah.
All right.
All right, next one.
Let's see if you guys are up to date on this astronomy news.
Okay, here you go. In a famous, wait a minute, there's a new all right, this one you should know.
there's a new
A new exoplanet, a dwarf star that has 7 more or less Earth-sized planets. What's the name of this star?
Earth 2.
Yes?
I
Eureka!
was gonna say,
Trappist one!
Trappist one.
Trappist 1.
There it is, Eureka, everybody.
Let's give a big round of
They
applause.
actually, you know what?
7 dwarfs for
You know,
stars.
Trappist 1 open for Skrillex.
Your own little
They did, yeah.
spaceship.
Whoa!
All right, bring it back. Here you go.
That's a cool prize.
Take that to Travis while we do.
They
What
open
are
for
the names
Skrillex.
of the
Trappist
7?
1?
Trappist one was like an IPA.
I thought it was something, I was closer to like Fetty Wap, because it was trap, you know, like that's what I thought. So we were talking about trap.
Have you heard of Trappist beer?
Yes, I made that reference.
All right, so this is.
Well, it's a Belgian beer, and it was Belgian astronomers that made this discovery. So they,
Ah.
so they contorted, they made up this really contorted acronym, TRAPPIST, simply as a joke.
Yeah, transiting planets and planetesimal small telescope, Trappist.
So what's so significant about this
In
exoplanet?
Chile.
Well, what's interesting about this is, one, you find a star with a bunch of planets. Look, most stars have planets. Finding planets is not a big deal. What we've learned in the last 10 years is that at least 70 or 80% of all stars have planets, right? And in astronomy, 70 or 80% is the same as all, right? There's no difference. In astronomy, pi is equal to 1. Okay, so this star has 7 planets, but that we know about. There are probably more, but it has 7, and they're very close to the stars. The star is a dim bulb. It's like my brother. It's kind of very close to the star. He's not in the audience. Okay, these 7 planets are all about the same size as Earth, right? Amazing. And because they're very tight in, they have the right temperature, so if there's water on these worlds, it's in oceans and so forth. So there could be life there. But here's the thing, if you were a sci-fi writer, this would be a great place to set your story. Because you go out at night and you see Venus maybe, it's in the evening sky. What does it look like? It's a bright star. You don't see any, it's a bright star. But if you were on one of the planets here around the TRAPPIST system, they're so close to one another that there would be balls in the sky, right? There'd be little spheres in the sky. Perfect. And you could get to, if you go to Mars, it takes you 7 months. If you go to the next planet here, it takes you the weekend. So if any of these is inhabited, you can make sure all of them are
That
inhabited.
is a really cool sci-fi book idea. Anyone want to write about that? Or
Called Balls in the Sky.
Really cool.
Skyballs.
Sky balls. Get there on the weekend.
So this is also important. So this is a dwarf star. So meaning it's about the size of the Jupiter, right?
Well, bigger than Jupiter, but it's 1/5 the diameter of the sun. The sun is 1.6 million kilometers.
I
It's 1/5 of it.
Guys repping our sun back there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's big.
And so the significance of this is that we could have maybe 3 of these planets in the habitable zone. We could have started life.
Oh yeah, at least 3, maybe more. And the other thing, what we're doing actually today, not that you might care or not, but we're actually using our antennas to look at this thing today. We wait for 2 of the planets to line up with us, so they sort of get in front of one another. Because if you think about it, when they transit one another, it's in a little eclipse. But the reason you wait then to listen is because if any of those two planets as a civilization and they colonize the other planet, then they're beaming, TV shows or something back and forth. And so now you're in the communication beam of those planets and we might pick up something. It's not very far away, almost 39 light years.
Yeah, okay, so it's like 40 light years away, Proxima Centauri is like 4 light years away, and that's a really interesting point. So if you find multiple planets to habitable zone, you want to wait until they eclipse one another, because then you have a higher likelihood of capture.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's a signal. So you're beaming TV shows to each other
Could be.
about destroying each other for their resources. Possible. All right. Or working together harmoniously.
Or like the housewives on that fucking planet.
Real
Crazy.
planet of Trappist?
Yeah. They throw microbial fused water from their fucking lakes on each other's faces. It took a while, but I got there. I finished it. I
You
finished
really
it.
had to lean on me to get that joke.
Man, it was hard. It was hard.
So worth it.
Number
All right.
9.
Question 9.
Question 9. In a famous TV series, Carl Sagan, ring any bell? Carl Sagan spoke of billions and billions. Billions and billions of what? What was he referring to? Stars, galaxies, or maybe
What was
other
it?
interstellar?
So who has an answer here?
Stars?
Stars.
Is that correct?
No.
No, but it's a reasonable
Answer?
answer. But,
Galaxies.
well, that's not right either.
You got him, what do you think it is?
Yeah. Go Canada.
Oh, look at that. Eureka for this dude. Your own very own alien ring from the movie Alien. You can wear it yourself. There it is. Enjoy.
I mean, he just waited for everyone else to get the other ones wrong.
Yes, I know. I did.
Yeah, like
I gave him
I like him a lot. He did exactly the same.
He did do that.
All right, what's the significance of this? Because he does make it very clear that there are billions.
Yeah, there are billions of lots of things. I mean, the guy in the back was right. There are billions of stars. There are more than billions. Like our galaxy, there's like 100 billion. Oh, no wonder
I'm good for something.
What's the significance of that turtleneck is what I'm thinking.
That was his signature couture.
Oh.
I like
Had
that.
a huge Adam bath.
He's
Well,
hot.
yeah, he took it off once his head dropped on the floor.
He's hot AF.
Let me see that neck, Carl.
Shut up.
Show that neck.
Show me that mind. That cosmos mind.
There are
So is there
billions
any
of
other
stars.
significance to Carl Sagan? I mean, as far as he's
So much significance to Carl Sagan.
Curious. How many people have never heard of Carl Sagan in this audience?
Anybody know?
Everyone's heard of Carl Sagan.
I mean, I'm impressed.
That's good.
It's not true of the millennials in the U.S.
It's unfortunate. We're fixing that with science comedy. We shall bring them Carl Sagan
Or Neil Tyson.
and Neil deGrasse Tyson and Seth Shostak.
Don't know.
Okay, so what is the significance of this? He never used the term billions and billions.
It's just pop culture again.
Pop
No,
culture,
right.
okay.
This will not affect world affairs.
That damn PC.
All right, and the answer that Seth has given you multiple times throughout the show, does anyone
Yes.
remember what the answer is?
So let's read the question.
What fraction of the American public thinks that aliens are here buzzing the skies?
Casey knows.
Okay, wait. Who wants
All
to-
right, what's the answer?
1/3.
1/3!
That's
Look at 100
All
billion
right,
Americans.
for you. What do we have here, Seth?
Oh, that's one of my books.
Oh, yeah.
The Confessions of an Alien Hunter, a scientist searching for extraterrestrial intelligence.
That guy sucks. That guy gets a
You can
book.
trade him for socks if you want to.
Yeah, yes, excited.
Yeah, he sucks, a child's toy, and an actual book. That doesn't seem equal.
No, I love the book.
So Seth, tell us a little bit about the significance of this question and this answer.
Well, once again, the significance is minimal, but I will say that every day I get phone calls and emails from people who are having difficulties with aliens in their personal lives. And, these people are not nuts. I mean, some of them are actually nuts, but there's a woman in Saskatchewan, some small place in Saskatchewan, who called me up 5 times in one day. Coral was her name. And she wanted me to fly up there to keep her dad from feeding her to the alien in the backyard dugout. And I didn't know what a backyard dugout was, that's not a term we use. So I had to ask her about that. But anyhow, and then I began talking to her about it, because she kept calling back, and I said, look, I really don't know if I can fly up there right away. And I said, besides, it doesn't sound like a very fatherly thing to do, to feed you. And I said, but besides that, how long has that alien been in the backyard dugout? She said, 9 years. I said, 9 years?
Wow.
Hasn't it gotten hungry before? I mean, you would think that people would be disappearing from your town. And she said, people do disappear from my town. My husband disappeared. In the end, she said it was difficult for her to deal with this problem, but she also had to deal with her multiple personalities.
That sounds like,
an episode of CSI.
oh yeah, I was gonna say somebody tried to make up a little white lie to make her feel better about her husband, like,
Well, I
skipping
didn't
town,
suggest the
and then it just spiraled out of control. She alienated him. Oh, he still
Coral,
lives here.
Saskatchewan want you to come over.
Yeah,
There we go.
but most people are very honest. They've just seen something in the sky, and they want me to opine as to whether it's, alien craft or not. So there's not much I can do. I mean, they tell stories, but I say, if you have photos or videos, send those to me, and I'll tell you what I see, if I see anything. So I have a lot of those. I've never heard anything that convinced me that the
So how did that end though? Did she just stop calling, or did you just say, let the alien eat you?
I think she
for
was
Christ's
fed to the
sake?
alien. No, no, she just stopped calling.
What happened to her husband?
That's the greatest question in the universe.
Yeah. Well, his officer was eaten by a giant alien in the dugout. What is the dugout then? I mean, for those who, I guess, live up north, what
It's
is,
for inside baseball.
yeah. Here it's baseball, what is in the backyard of a home? Anybody?
Maybe they don't have them in Canada. I mean, maybe she was Liechtenstein or
Is
something.
dugout where you poop?
Salad?
It's an outhouse. but it's
They
a-
have plumbing.
Is it an outhouse? All right,
Guess they
nobody
don't
knows
use
anything. I
these
feel like
terms.
I've been abducted.
All right, what's the
It
answer?
just sounds like she was a crazy person from a weird place.
What's
She was just
up?
like,
Dugout.
A dugout.
All
Well,
right.
I don't know what to do. I don't
Don't
remember.
know.
I thought it was just a shed in the backyard.
Oh, shed in the backyard, okay. Okay, so, all right, Seth, I have a quick question for you. We'll open it up for some questions for you guys here in a second.
We have actually one more question here.
Oh, we do, we have a bonus question.
Bonus
Yes.
Name this SETI instrument.
SETI instrument, everybody.
Wow.
Give me a trash can.
It's a comedy answer.
That's good.
This is a
Xylophone.
Nobody knows.
Tin nipple. Okay, it's not something you can wear, my friend.
Hint, it has
They
my
opened
name
for
in
Trappist
it.
one.
Alan Wrench.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Who?
Alan Wrench.
Who?
Alan.
Alan Wrench.
It has Alan in it.
Dr. Wrench. Dr. Alan Wrench.
Any ideas?
I think you better go.
Nobody knows.
No, they're almost there. You have one word in it.
Oh, it's an Allen probe.
Hmm.
Wait, that's.
How about, is it called SETI's dugout? There we go.
All right.
Modest amount of width.
It also has the T word in it.
Alan.
Allen terrestrial.
Yeah.
T-word?
Remember the V? What was VLA? What did that stand for?
Very large.
Okay, so what would? This is the AT. This is the ATR. ATR.
Alan telescope array?
Alan touring.
Is that it?
E-pins.
Allen telescope.
Allen
array.
telescope array.
Oh.
Hip hop array. Hip hop array.
Glow in the dark.
That's good.
Wait, your name is a Ray?
Better than a buck. Better than a buck. That says I have friends.
All right, so just quick, we'll open up the floor to some questions that you guys can ask Seth here as an audience. I just want to start it off by asking Seth a quick question. So you listen for sounds, for other life transmitting signals. And then we have other tools, like we were discussing, transit photometry tools that look for planets orbiting other stars in the habitable zone. We send out probes to collect samples from Mars and from other places. Do Do you think one of those has a higher likelihood of finding life than the other?
Well, no, for me, I mean, I bet everybody a cup of Tim Hortons that will find life. But it's been sold to Burger King. Or maybe it's the other way around. I think it's the other way around. Anyhow, whatever. I bet everybody a cup of coffee will find it within 20 years.
Yeah? Now, how long have you been saying that? 20 years?
18.
Okay.
No, not.
But specifically the method, because should we not pool more of our funds into a specific method?
Well, look, no money is going into this except what people donate. I gotta tell you, this is not funded by the government.
This is Paul Allen.
That's why
Well,
the
he
tip
gave money to
jars
build
run
some of
around
that
the house.
hardware, but in fact, to do this experiment, we just rely on people sending $20 bills in the mail. It's very difficult. In fact, believe it or not, I'm testifying to Congress next 2 weeks from now. Because there's a guy in Congress who finds this interesting, but there's no government money. There used to be. There used to be a NASA project, but that was killed in 1993 by a senator from Nevada.
There's a congressman who thinks science is interesting.
There is, actually. He's the chair of the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee.
The chair, so he's a Republican?
He is a Republican.
All right, we're getting
There you go.
somewhere. We're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
Slowly.
I don't think any money will come out of it, frankly, but
Thank
just,
goodness,
you know.
thank goodness there's a Science and Technology Committee inside Congress.
There's also
Goodness.
a Senate.
Maybe, well, I don't know, spread some fake news or something to try to get some money? I don't know.
Okay, all right, so let's open up the floor for questions from you guys to Seth. Raise your hand if you have a question.
Okay.
All right,
here we
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so- Good.
Look at the Canadians going, you go. No, you go. There you go.
Right, the guy in the red shirt.
Yeah.
What do you think of the WOW system?
All right, what do I think of the WOW signal? This is another one of the cognizant.
What is that?
Like the gentleman in the front who I know is sad that we didn't give him the 10-inch refractor we were going to do. The WOW signal picked up in 1977 by Ohio State University, big ear antenna, and nobody knows what it was, but it wasn't seen again. It was a signal that looked like it could have been ET, but that telescope automatically looked again a little over a minute later and didn't find it. And we've looked with this thing, never found it. Other people have used antennas in Australia and other, exotic locales and never found that signal again. If you only find it once, you can say, well, I don't know what it was, Bob. Maybe it was ET. Well, maybe it was ET, and maybe it wasn't ET. And it's not science if you can't verify it. Pardon me?
Do you think
It
it was
could have
just
been a glitch. Yeah, if you ask the people from Ohio State, they think either a glitch or a telecommunications satellite or something.
All right, additional questions? We had 2 questions back there. Who got the other one? Yep, what is it?
So I think Musk or someone wanted to get to Mars within like 10 years or so.
Fewer than that.
Oh God, is that possible? Do you think?
Is it possible? Well, I don't know. He talks about, sending people to Mars by 2020. That's only 1,000 days from now, right? I doubt that he can do that. I really doubt that he can do that. But, there was a guy in the whole Mars business, a guy named Bob Zubrin in New York. Some of you are techies and you know about Bob Zubrin. And he always claimed, and he claimed this 10 years ago, he could get people to Mars within 5 years for $5 billion. He's a very smart guy. And so, it's one of those things that if you think it's a priority, if it's a national priority, you could do it. If somehow this became more important than anything else that cost a few tens of billions of dollars, like maybe a wall or something, then you could do it. You could do it. But at the rate at which NASA can afford to fund things, it probably will take 10 or 20 years. But I don't know. We'll see what Musk does. Maybe he'll take a whole bunch of people to Mars and then crash.
So but even before humans, there will be robotics there assembling housing and solar arrays.
Well, there are robots there now, as you know, but they're not building anything except a reputation. Yeah.
Wow. I can see all this gossip in the background, jeez. All right, we got another question over here.
Let's go.
What do you think are the first things we should do if we do ever find extraterrestrial life? And why would it ever be a national priority? Or why would it ever stop being?
Yeah. Well,
You sound
when
like
you
a
say what,
senator that he's gonna be talking to.
you say, what would we do if we found extraterrestrial life? I mean, I make a distinction between finding, say, microbes on Enceladus or Mars or something like that, and finding intelligent life. I don't know what you mean, or maybe you mean. If you talk about intelligent life, there was some reporter called me up yesterday, or maybe a day, and said, does the government have a plan in case the aliens land? Right? I get this question fairly frequently. Now, I don't know what goes on in the Pentagon. I've been there, but I don't know what really goes in there. And maybe they got a plan, but it doesn't matter what their plan is. Because any society that could come here, right, is way beyond ours. So if they're, you know, if they're malevolent, if they're just nasty guys, it's gonna be Bambi versus Godzilla. And we are not the lizard, okay? So it's, you know, it doesn't matter what your plan is. Did the natives of, what is the Watling Island, right, the Arawak Indians, in 1492, did they have a plan to look, just in case some Spanish ships come over the horizon, we better have a plan. It didn't matter. It wouldn't matter. So, you know, I
So
think
it'll be genocide.
no, they might just come because they're interested in the rock and roll. Who's to say? But I don't think that's a realistic scenario. I think it's much more likely you pick up a signal. You don't have to go anywhere, right?
What's our plan?
It will be a big news item. That's what the plan is. I mean, you can broadcast something back if you want, but I mean, it's just going to be big news to know. It would be like the I don't know, the natives of Ontario, right? 500 years ago, they go down to the beach. There are some beaches in Ontario, and you pick a bottle out of the water, and it's got some scribbling on it from somebody on the other side of the water. It doesn't change their daily lives, but they know that there's something on the other side of all this water.
Okay.
You know,
Can I ask you a question? Is the future of human life on another planet? I mean, is like the future of human existence off of Earth?
yeah, are we destined to live among the stars? Well, if you live in LA, maybe. It's the, I know, that's kind of weak, but most of them are. Well, look, we are running out of stuff. We will run out of stuff here, right? In particular, things like zinc, copper. I mean, copper has like 30, 40 more years in which you can afford to buy copper pipe, right? People will be breaking into your house not for the big screen TV, but for the copper in the walls. They're probably already doing that, right? Okay. And I'm going to run out of zinc and platinum and all sorts of things that you sort of need for your gusto-grabbing lifestyle. So what do you do about that? Well, you mine asteroids and bring that stuff down to Earth. That's one thing to do. But eventually, you've got to either spread out or you've got to develop a very static society which doesn't grow. It doesn't have very many opportunities for young people. And that doesn't sound to me like the right thing. But all that may be short-circuited by something we're going to do in the next 50 years anyhow, which is to develop artificial intelligence. And once you've done that, really, you know, we just become the pets, which is okay by me because you get to eat and sleep.
I like that idea of being AI's pet. Or like Elon says, have it grow alongside us, inside of us. We can have control of it.
He's deluding himself.
Yeah, sounds creepy.
You mean diluting himself?
Might be doing that too, but.
Thank you, one person.
All right, so we'll go ahead and bring the show to a close.
All right.
I want to tell you guys thank you.